Welcome to today's expert webinar presented by AccountantsWorld. My name is Div Gonzali. I'm the Vice President at AccountantsWorld. We'll be getting started in just a couple of minutes here with today's presentation from Gary Boomer, the founder of Boomer Consulting. If you are having any issues with your audio, you can go to the audio panel on GoToWebinar, and you can select either to hear through your computer headsets and speakers or via the phone. And if you select phone, it'll provide you with a call-in number as well as an access code there. Also, if you haven't yet downloaded today's presentation, you can do so from the Handouts tab on the GoToWebinar control panel. You'll see a PDF there called 2016 Mindset Determines Growth. So please go ahead and download that if you'd like to so you can follow along with Gary's presentation. We'll be getting started in just another minute or two. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, and we are back. So once again, for those of you who just joined in the past couple of minutes, my name is Div Gonzali. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at AccountantsWorld. Our presentation today, our expert webinar presented by AccountantsWorld, will be titled Mindset Determines Growth, and it will be presented by Gary Boomer, who many of you know, the founder of Boomer Consulting. So once again, thanks for joining us today. If you haven't downloaded today's presentation, you can do so directly from the GoToWebinar panel. Simply click on the Handouts tab, and then you can go ahead and download the PDF from there to follow along with Gary. Today's webinar is eligible for one free CPA credit, and that's based on active webinar presentation. And what active webinar presentation means is three things. Number one, you attend the live webinar for no less than 50 minutes. Number two, you respond to all polling questions. There will be 4 of those during the webinar. And number 3, there's a post-webinar survey that you'll see pop up as soon as you close out of the GoToWebinar panel at the end of the presentation today. Go ahead and submit that post-webinar survey either immediately after the webinar, or you'll receive a link to it via email, and you can submit it that way as well. So make sure you submit that in order to receive free CPA credit. Most of you have used the GoToWebinar panel before, but just a refresher on how to use it. You can use the orange arrow to expand or hide the panel. So if you're not seeing it right now, you're probably seeing a orange tabbed arrow. You can click that to expand it. Audio options, as I mentioned before, you can use the audio section to choose to listen via telephone or via your computer speakers. If you select telephone, it'll provide you with a dial-in number and access code. If you have any questions for either AccountantsWorld or Gary during the presentation, you can expand the question section, type your question in, and click send. And we'll try to get to some questions during the webinar and certainly leave some time at the end of the webinar for questions as well. And then finally, as I mentioned, if you haven't yet downloaded today's webinar materials from Gary, you can do so under the handout section. The 2016 Expert Webinar Series is continuing today. Today is the second presentation. Hopefully you were able to attend Dr. Chandra Bansali's presentation last month. But if you weren't able to, that is actually available as a download on our website. So you can go to AccountantsWorld.com and view that one. The next one that we have coming up is Eric Askerson on July 26th. And he'll be speaking on using technology to improve relevancy. And then you see Randy Johnston comes in after that in August, and we'll have one more every month for the rest of the year. So there will be one every month from this point onward through December. So we encourage you to go ahead and sign up for all of them if you haven't done so already. If you haven't yet registered for all of them, simply you can click on that Click Here tab to go to that, or just go to AccountantsWorld.com, scroll down the page about halfway, and you'll see a a little section about the expert webinar series, and you can register from there as well. Before I turn it over to Gary, just a quick word about our sponsor, AccountantsWorld. AccountantsWorld is the recognized pioneer in cloud computing solutions for accountants. We like to say that we've been doing cloud computing for longer than the term cloud computing has existed. We're now at 15 years and counting. And what sets AccountantsWorld apart is really two things. Number one, we've created a fully integrated suite of solutions for accounting, payroll, practice management, after-the-fact payroll, document management, websites, all of these different areas, and they're all fully integrated so data flows seamlessly between one and the other. They're all fully cloud-enabled and fully secure for both you and your clients. And what our approach to cloud-based accounting and payroll provides is measurable results in terms of better control over accounting and payroll, the ability to work much more collaboratively with your clients than you can currently do, higher profits in fewer hours, and we received a number of awards and 5-star product reviews from many of the major accounting publications. You can see there what Jim Szynski has said. He's one of our customers, and what he has said about AccountantsWorld as well. So we encourage you to visit AccountantsWorld.com, learn more about our solutions, and you can also go there and then go to our accounting or payroll page and sign up for specific webinars to get introduced to our way of presenting accounting and payroll solutions and what those could do for you and the unique benefits that they can provide to you and to your clients. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Gary Boomer, the founder of Boomer Consulting. And Gary, I'll go ahead and give you the screen in just a minute here.
Okay, thank you, Deb. As soon as I get the message here, I'll share my screen. There we go. Can you see my PowerPoint now?
I am not seeing it yet. There we go.
Mindset determines growth?
Yes.
Great. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Well, as Deb said, this is Gary Boomer. I'm the founder of Boomer Consulting, and we've got a topic that I have a lot of passion for today. You'll notice that mindset determines growth. Disruption accelerates your thinking. Excuse me, and if I could ask you to do one thing today, that's to think a little bit and think about where your firm will be 3 years from today, because that's part of the presentation here is what's happening in the world, how's it going to impact your firm, and what do you want to look like as a firm 3 years from today. I'm going to just give you a little bit of background here. I'm not going to go through this entire slide, but I'm going to say that my role at Boomer Consulting changed in April in that I am now in charge of being a visionary and strategist. Some might say that as a visionary you can't get caught doing any real work, and I kind of like that idea, but that hasn't been how it's played out so far. In that Jim Boomer is now the CEO at Boomer Consulting. We've got a great young team. I was notified about 30 minutes ago that we're up to 16 people now, and you will see the areas that we really focus on at Boomer Consulting. We added a process group last year. We've got 3 black belts, Lean Six Sigma, talent development's a big issue. In the marketplace, Sandra Wiley has always been a leader in that area. Developing the middle of your firm or future leaders is one of our things. And then we've been known for our technology and how we bridge the gap between the leadership of the firm and the technology. And then finally, how you grow your business. That's what we're really all about at Boomer Consulting. And I feel very fortunate to have surrounded myself with some very great, bright minds that with experience in the profession, experience in HR, experience in technology, and then how do we bring those all together. This is kind of our agenda, and as I said, the big thing I want you to do is think today, and I'm going to ask you to think a little bit differently than what you thought in the past. We've all been trained, or at least I was, to think linear and think local. And in today's world, it's more global, and you have to think exponentially. And I'll try to tie that exponential thinking into the disruption that's occurring through technology and how that's impacting our profession. Then I'm going to get to a mindset scorecard. Having the right mindset today is as important, and maybe more so important, than the skill sets and the tool set. Now, most accountants always want to go to the tool set and say, we've got to have the right tools. But you can have the right tools if you don't have the right mindset and skill set. Those tools are not going to do you any good. So one of the tools we're going to share with you is the business capability model, where we look at any business. It could be almost any accounting firm as well, and how can you automate that business, make it more efficient, and where have you been spending dollars on technology in the past, where are you going to spend them in the future, and this should provide you a tool to consult with your clients as well as look at your own individual situation. And then finally, I'd like to give you a 5-step action plan how you can get started and really accomplish something from today's presentation. So we'll get right into our agenda here with the first slide being the definition of what clients want today. And you'll see that clients don't really know what they want. But Dan Burrus, author, lecturer, I think has laid this out very well in saying that clients today don't know what they want because the things they most want are things they don't know yet are possible. And I've always said that clients don't know what they don't know. Well, he goes on to say, give your clients the ability to do what they can't currently do, but would want to if they only knew it was possible. And you have to be out in front on this. You can't be a follower, in my opinion. So I think Dan's done a good job of kind of setting the stage for today's presentation. Now, so I know who I'm talking to today. I'd like to ask you to complete the survey here, and Dip's going to put the question up on screen, and then we'll share the results with you here momentarily.
Okay, thank you, Gary. So everyone should be seeing the poll question up in front of them. What size is your firm? And there are 5 choices there. Please select one of the following and then click submit at that point. And we'll take about another 15 seconds or so here for you to be able to provide your response here. And this will help both Gary and myself in terms of gearing the rest of the presentation today and any follow-up materials to your needs. So once again, voting in the polls is required in order to earn CP. So if you're here, please go ahead and vote here. I'll give another 10 seconds or so for any stragglers to go ahead and complete voting. All right, going once, going twice, and we'll close this. Okay, Gary, so we see 75% of today's attendees are under 2 million, and then about an even share between 2 million and 5 million and 6 million to 15 million.
Well, we even have some firms that are in the top 100 here, as long as as well as sole proprietors, it looks like. This will help me out, and I will make one comment here that when it comes to advisory services, sometimes the smaller firms are actually ahead of the larger firms. In that I think everyone knows they need to be involved and grow their practices in the advisor area, but they always, sometimes it's more difficult in the large firms to do that and make those changes. So this is good information to know. Let's go on to the next question then.
Okay. And
is what best describes your role in the firm?
Okay, and I'll go ahead and pull up the second poll question here, and people should see that open in front of them at this point. And again, 5 different options there for what best describes your role. Remember to click the submit button as well. And again, voting in both of these questions as well as the 2 at the end is required in order to earn CP. And we'll take 10 more seconds here. Don't forget to click submit to have your vote counted. Okay, and we're going to close now. Okay, Gary, 64% are owner or partner, and 12 to 14% each from manager and staff as well.
Okay, great. We have a good mixture here. That gives me some insight. So thank you very much for answering that poll. Now we're going to get into the main part of the presentation. I don't know if you've done this or not, maybe because we've got a lot of smaller firms, you haven't been through this process, but that's a process of visioning. What do you want to be in 5 years or 3 years? We've done this 3 times in the last 10 years in our own company, and it's amazing how things tend to play out much quicker when you have a vision and a plan. So not only what do you want to be, what do you want to do, what type of services do you want to offer, what do you want to create in the way of expertise, what do you want to experience, and I hear a lot of accountants say they want to experience more balance in their lives. They don't want to be so deadline oriented and have such a tough life during January, February, March, and April. So what do you want to have? And here you see the rear view mirror. I think it's indicative of how it's always clearer in the past than it is to look into the future. But there's a reason that you have a larger windshield than you have a rear view mirror. And I think what we're going to do today is try to look at that windshield and look into the future and give you some clarity as to what we see coming and how it can benefit you and your practices. So here's our mission at Boomer Consulting, is to make you more successful and future ready. It's pretty simple, and it really focuses on the planning, the people, the processes, and the technology, which brings us all kind of together. I like this little chart. I got it from a strategic coach, Dan Sullivan, and his book, The Game Changer. But I think mindset is the bridge that takes us from where we are today into the future. Now, some of us have been very successful, but you can't stay in the past and you can't stay in the status quo. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. If you think back 20 years ago and how much impact the internet or the World Wide Web had on your practice, it wasn't that great. Well, if you look into the future, it's not going to be the World Wide Web as much as it's going to be things like blockchain. And if you're not familiar with blockchain, that's the foundation on which Bitcoin is based. But the banking industry, the title industry, other industries are very concerned about how this technology is going to do away with a lot of their current services. And I can give you a couple examples that would be specific to the accounting profession, and they may be pretty disruptive to you, but a lot of what we do in the audit area is reconcile and validate the transaction to give it integrity or make sure the integrity is there. With blockchain and that type of system, that would occur every 10 minutes in a secure environment. And so there wouldn't be all this reconciliation that's going on today. It could also be used in the tax collection system in the United States to get the taxes collected and distributed to the right taxing authority. So while this is a little bit futuristic, I caution you that things are happening faster today than they've ever happened, and I'll demonstrate to you why that's happening here in just a minute. So we are in a new game. I'm going to try to explain that game to you in more depth and why it's going to impact you and how you can take advantage of it. So the first thing that we talked about last year was playing above the line. We talked about compliance services, performance-based services, and strategic services, and you'll see some examples of those in this chart. Well, the first thing you have to change is your mindset if you're going to play above the line, and we have a scorecard, and we're going to try to get you to be a game changer and not just be satisfied with the success that you've had to date. Secondly, we're going to provide you, excuse me, I said provide, we're going to suggest that you may need some new skill sets personally and on your team in order to offer these services, and it's going to be more in the advisor area and future focus. And then finally, what tools are you going to need? What's the technology stack? And that's where the business capability model comes into play. And you'll see AccountantsWorld is one of those players that can certainly play in several of the areas, and hopefully you'll understand that after we go through that particular slide here. So the business capability model is a tool that you're going to walk away from our presentation today. Hopefully you'll be able to use it internally as well as with your clients in an advisory services capacity. So this is a quote that Warren Buffett I first heard, and Barry Melanson at the AICPA's been making, stating that, you know, someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. The question is, when should you plant the tree? You probably should have planted the tree 20 years ago, but if you didn't, you only planted it 3 years ago, I think there are ways to catch up and be future ready much quicker than there were in the past if you kind of follow the right formula. So I like to use this and say that the problem's never the problem, but rather how you think about the problem. And we encourage 10 times thinking because it's much easier to come up with a solution to the problem if you think in terms of 10 times. For those firms that are above 30 million, if you'll think if you were 300 million, the firms that are 500,000, if you would think you're 5 million, the solutions are much more apparent, they're more exciting, and you're able to attract the best people and retain the best people when you think bigger. Now this is where exponential thinking comes in, and we've really been trained to think linear and as well as local, and you need to think global and exponential. So here's what's kind of driving this exponential thinking today, and you're probably somewhere in the spectrum in your thinking, and your technology is probably there as well. 10 years, 15 years ago, we said you had to be digitized, yet there's way too much paper in the CPA profession. You can't grow, you can't scale, you just can't do a lot of things unless you're digital. The paper world is very limiting, and so that's why we say this is the first D of the 6 exponentials. The second one is kind of deceptive, and that's when you double every year, and the best example of that I can give you right now is processing power, Moore's Law. We've heard every 18 months it's going to double and the cost is going to be half. Well, there's other things occurring today that I'm going to suggest that are going to have a big impact on you, and that's why it's somewhat deceptive. The numbers were small, and if you double a small number, it doesn't amount to much, but sooner or later it does. And one of the questions I'm going to have for you in just a little bit is, how much money would you have if you doubled it every day and you started with a penny for 31 days? It's a little bit of a mind teaser. Third is this can be disruptive. Once you get to the point where this exponential growth is turning, and they call it at the curve of the knee, And so it's going almost straight up rather than being flat. And we're seeing that in a lot of industries today, in the area of medicine. We're seeing it also in construction. We're seeing it in drones. We're seeing it in all industries. And we all like to look at the other person's industry and say they're being disrupted, but I don't see that this is really going to be that big to the accounting profession. Well, it is going to be big. And what happens when this technology starts to dematerialize, so that you look at your iPhone today and you probably have on that smartphone over $1 million worth of tools and applications if you bought them at retail over the past 20 years. And then third, demonetized it. Think of what's happened to the telephone industry because of Skype. And then finally, Google really allows anyone in the world to have access to this if they have an internet connection. So these 6 Ds really impact us just like they do any other profession. So here's my teaser today. If you have 1 cent and you double it every day for 31 days, how much money will you have? And most of you, since I can't see you and we're not on a video call, I really can't see your reaction, but I think you'll be surprised to see that after 31 days, you'd have $10,737,418.24. Well, that's not much after the first week or the second week, but it really gets to be a large amount when you have exponential growth. So I know my mind, until I sit down and I figured this out, I guessed that somewhere you'd probably be at the $1 million level. Well, I was a few days short because when it doubles it, that last 28, 29, 30, and 31st, that makes a big difference. So the challenge here, and one of the things that we see out there, is some complacency because the profession has been so successful. And I'll say that Henry Ford's quote here is, if you think you can, you probably can. If you think you can't, you probably can't. So it is a mindset situation. So I'm going to show you the mindsets that I think are very important today if you're going to grow your firm. And it's important that you hire or develop people that have similar mindsets. And the first one, and probably one of the most important ones, if you want to change results, the quickest way to do that is through accountability. And so I say you've got to hold yourself accountable as well as hold others accountable in your organization if you want to make these changes. And I will say that I also believe that change isn't enough. I talk about change, but I'm really talking about transformation here. And I know there are others out there that believe that our profession is going to have to transform in order to remain relevant. So here's the second one. You got to think the future is bigger than the past. If all you dwell on is what you're going to lose because of automation, I think that's a hurdle or obstacle that's very difficult to overcome. The other thing is the day of the rugged individualist, I'll do it all myself, is over. Clients have too broad a need and too broad a wants for one person, so you have to play as a team, and it is a team sport, as I just said. I think you've got to be willing to change and willing to learn faster than the competition. You also have to look at your processes, and since we've had the capability of a Lean Six Sigma, I can tell you that the reviews that we've done in firms in traditional services are really paying big dividends. Many of those firms have steps in the processes that have been there for years and loops. They don't get the work in and out quick enough. Therefore, they're wasting time, and they're also wasting a lot of people resources in their processes. So I think that many processes can be automated, and that's where the business capability model will come in here in just a little bit. Also, you have to be a lifelong learner. You have to do more than just your 40 hours of continuing education every year to stay on top of this. you have to want to grow if you're going to grow. And some people say, well, we're doing awfully well. I'd like to just stay the same. I wish you could, but I don't really think that that's possible in today's world. And the last one there was connected. You have to be connected. Have a peer group. Have other professionals that you can connect with because they can help you get there much quicker. So let's talk a little bit about employment engagement. That's big. Where do you find the employees today? How do you get them engaged? How do you keep them engaged? And I'm going to show you 4 areas that's part of this mindset. And the first one is many of your employees are frustrated. They may feel they're failing because they haven't had the amount of education they need. They don't understand your processes. They don't understand the technology. And many young people, we think they're technology literate. Well, they know social media, but they may not understand the technology of accounting. The second area is they can be underperforming, and there can be all kinds of reasons for that. And the third area is conventional success, and we would say these are very good employees. But the fourth area here is transformative and really game changers, and those are the people that will get you to the next level. Often those are also the people that when they come up with ideas, people first say that was a bad idea. Then when they make that idea work, they want to know how to scale the idea, and then that becomes the new innovative idea. So it's not unusual for these game changers to have some ideas that don't work. So we're going to try to talk about some of the tools and processes that you have in a self-managed firm, and this is particularly important for those smaller firms that don't have a lot of people, in that you don't want to spend all your time managing, you want to spend your time with your clients. So first you have to have a shared vision. What is that vision? I spoke about it earlier, and sharing that plan with people in the organization. Then secondly, the people with the right mindset. Third, the right processes. And fourth, accountability. If you have that, you will have a self-managed firm, and you wrap that with a technology platform or ecosystem, and that becomes your accelerator. And technology accelerates, and one of the things we're not going to talk about today, but I will mention, is that your business model of hours times dollars no longer is valid in this type of environment. So you're going to have to go to something more in the value pricing arena. So I'm giving you a firm checkup here. I'm not going to go through this. This is just in the material because I want to save some time at the end for questions. So we've got a couple of checklists here that you can go through and discuss on your own. I know every accountant loves a checklist. Sadly, checklists don't always substitute for good judgment, but at least I've given you some short checklists to kind of check up and see where you stack up. So this is a question we always ask, and everybody says yes, yet when I ask why aren't you doing this, then the number one answer is we don't have time to play above the line. We're too busy doing compliance-based work. And then I come back with something like, you mean you're too busy picking up $10 bills to look on the table and just grab $100 bills? And they say, well, I hadn't thought of it that way, but perhaps that's right. The second reason that firms don't do this, or accountants don't do this, many don't feel comfortable playing above the line and giving their clients advice. They haven't been trained to do that. And below the line, I'll say, is hindsight, performance is insight, and strategic would be foresight. When you mix those three together, you have innovation, and that's what the clients are really looking for today. So I think it's important that you figure out how to do this, and you focus your time, your effort, and your vision above the line going forward. So here's kind of a quick roadmap in the client accounting services area or client advisory services. And I'll go through these very quickly. Is what's your value proposition for taking your clients to the cloud today? You're their source, their trusted business advisor. You have access to these tools. You know, I think you can write a very good value proposition. Then what's your menu of services? Oftentimes we see firms that don't have a menu and they can't break those services out so you can buy above the line or below the line services. And I think when you buy them as a package, they're worth more. Then who are your target clients? Perhaps some of your clients today are not the clients that are going to get you to the next level, and you're just doing the busy work for them. You may need to free up some time. So what does it look like? How do you get a strategic account? For the smaller firms, you know, I think you'd love to have clients that pay you $10,000 to $15,000 a year rather than a 1040 where they pay you $500. So if you don't have a strategy of how you're going to get there, what niches you're going to focus on, it's going to be hard to do by just taking everything that comes in the door. Then what are the characteristics of a unique ability team? In the past, we've said the CPA designation and CPA is what you really need to be in our profession. Well, it's interesting, but far more non-CPAs are coming into our profession in the largest of firms to do the advisory services work. So if the CPA wants to remain as the quarterback on the team, they need to build a team that's based on the services that the clients want and need. How do you package and price this? Well, this is where the fixed pricing, the menu, this is where the construction pricing model of change orders comes into play. And then finally, what are your processes going to be? You're not going to go out to that client every day. You're not going to ship or send paper files. This is all going to be digital. And that's why I said if you're not digital, it's tough to really operate in today's environment. So this is the roadmap. I'm going to stop right there for a quick question and ask how many of you have an advisory services roadmap today.
Okay, so I will go ahead and launch that poll. Attendees, you should be seeing the question in front of you at this point. Again, do you have an advisory services roadmap? Yes, no, or going to develop one? Please go ahead and select the appropriate response and make sure to hit the submit button. And just a reminder again, voting in all of the poll questions is required in order to earn CPE today. So we'll take another 10 to 15 seconds here for people to get their votes in. Okay, last call. Please go ahead and finish voting and remember to hit submit if you haven't done so. All right, let's go ahead and close this out. And so Gary, we see 13% currently have an advisory services roadmap and 25% are going to develop one.
Well, that's good. That puts it in perspective, and hopefully the materials here will help you with the development of that roadmap. And it's going to be a dynamic document that will grow as you move forward. But it's difficult to explain to your clients, your team, and even yourself if you don't have some type of roadmap in place. So let's go on to the next slide and talk a little bit about the motivation behind this business capability model. And I've really been working on this for over the last year and really serious for the last 6 months. And I went to a conference called Abundance 360 by Peter Diamandis in January, and I saw the convergence of all this technology. I read a book called Mindset that I'd highly recommend by Carol Dweck, and it really talks about having a set or fixed mindset or having a growth mindset. And I see both characteristics in the CPA profession, when I was a partner in a CPA firm. I saw that, and it was very difficult to get people with a fixed mindset to move in and take some risk for the future. But once their share of the pie started to dwindle, then they wanted to move forward. But they were always too late. And it was partially because just how they were wired. It wasn't anything wrong with them. They just didn't think about the future. And then I heard Dan Burrus speak this year. I read a book called Life After the Death Selling, and we've had a project internally called the Same Page Project to get all of our people using the same processes, the same technology, storing files the same way internally at Boomer Consulting, because you just, as you grow, you can't have multiple processes and people doing things different ways, or you can't work remotely, you can't be efficient, you can't train people. And last, some of you may be familiar with the franchise European Wax Center and PwC. Steve Brown owns several franchises in this, and I would see him take his cell phone out in the morning, look at that, and he could tell what each of his stores had done that day. So I asked about that technology, and he said, well, we're going to change all that and go to a platform that will allow that to be automated rather than so much spreadsheet. And as I get into this model with you, I'm going to say the way you've made this work in the past as accountants is you've all had spreadsheet disease. And to scale it and make it efficient going forward, you have to have systems that really integrate. So this was my motivation behind the business capability model. Now here's just a definition of a business capability model. It's the expression or the articulation of the capacity, resources, and expertise an organization needs in order to perform core functions. I would say that any CPA firm is the same as a small business. You are a small business. There might be a handful of CPA firms in the world that wouldn't be classified as a small business, and your needs are going to be very similar. You may need different software, but your applications and your areas are going to be the same. So we call this the P4 capability model, where you have to have a plan, you have to have the right people, the processes, and the platform. So here is a blank business capability model. At the bottom you see you have to have a vision, you have to have a plan, and we like to hold people accountable, so we say personal 90-day game plans, and that's the foundation of this entire system. So let's look across the top, and you see channels of doing business. As an accountant today, you may do business with clients coming to your office. You may do it over the phone. You might do it online. You might do it with a mobile device, social media. Security and privacy is important. You might even have communities of clients if you are in a niche business. Over on the left side, you see the back office, the front office of the firm, and then your stakeholders, which would be your vendors or business partners, as we like to call them, the support of your systems, the firm or company, the customers, and then the talent that work in that company. So this is just a blank, and now I'm going to show you the 9 areas that any business can benefit from during automation. If you look at the CPA industry today, where they're spending their money is on services and products, and that would primarily be in the area of tax software and accounting and auditing software. Then they're also spending money on financial operations, which would be their general accounting. But they aren't spending enough in firm operations, marketing, sales, technology, HR, legal, brand protection, and their business partners. What do I mean by this? I think you have to put some meat on the bones now to really understand where I'm headed and what I'm saying. So in the next slide here, you will see firm operations. This is where scheduling applications, workflow, workforce management, office management go. Some of these things could go in different buckets, like project management. We could call that important to firm operation. Same way with content management or contact management, quality management, client satisfaction. These things can all be moved to different boxes, if you will, but all of these things can be automated if they are integrated with software. And the challenge today in the accounting firm is, where do I go to get software that integrates in all these boxes? I'll tell you that those of you that are above 5 million, when you look at your file servers, even if they're hosted today, you probably have upward of 100 applications that your IT people are trying to manage and orchestrate. So let's look at this in a graphic format that I think will explain the problem a little bit better. And I've only used a few of the vendors that are in the accounting profession. Some of these vendors play both for accounting firms and for clients of accounting firms. But you'll see AccountantsWorld fits in there in firm operations. It fits in services and products. It fits in marketing. It also helps you manage your technology because you're doing it in the cloud. It does the back office financial operations. It can even impact talent because with your payroll system, it's there. So probably no vendor plays in all 9. I do show Salesforce in several of those because that is an application that you can have a lot of add-ons, and I just put that in for demonstration purposes. But you'll see that companies that we have relied on for years, like CCH and Thompson, are playing in primarily services and products and financial operations, but they spill over into firm operations, but they don't really touch business partners, legal compliance. They might touch HR and talent, but not much in marketing and sales. So this becomes a challenge, and if you sit down in your own firm and look at this, you'll see why you don't have the flow of data and information that you would like to have. And that's why you need a roadmap going forward. And what I've done for you today is, I think, I'm missing a slide here. And I'll get this. I have a checklist with questions in each of these 9 areas, and I'll get that to Div so that you can have access to that checklist. It will help you ask the right questions in these areas, and it will help you not only personally but with your clients. The other area of complexity that we have today is along that top line. And this is where a lot of the security and privacy issues are. You not only have your back office technology, you have your call center, your telephone system, you have your email system, you probably use social media in some way to drive business. You might even be using messaging and chat, and then you can have a community. I've tried to keep it fairly simple so it didn't overwhelm you here, because this can be really overwhelming when you look at a business. And I'll go back to my motivation here. When I explored further what EWC and PWC were doing, they were really building this out so all the applications work together and the data transferred from one application to another. They didn't have to use spreadsheets and manipulate the information and download. It was true integration. So I was highly motivated seeing someone in our profession like PwC doing this, and thought it could be done for our clients and for any firm out there. So here's kind of a sample action plan that I'll show you. I think the first thing you need to do is probably look at your vision and your strategic plan. When we do this for firms, the 5 things that really are important in most firms are your agreements and compensation plans up to date? Do they really promote behaviors that are for the future, or are they behaviors from the past? How do you grow? What are your service lines going to be? How are you going to drive that growth? Where are the target clients? What areas have potential for growth? What areas are probably dying and you may want to get out of in the future? Then what kind of talent do you need for that? What are your process, and what are the value-based steps in those processes, and how do you cut the others out? And then finally, how does technology support the above 4? Then I would suggest you conduct some process reviews internally to try to streamline your processes. Oftentimes people justify what they've been doing because they're part of the process. Normally you have to step outside the process and not be part of it in order to change the process. The other thing, that project management's becoming so important that you need to identify and train some people that can manage projects. And the fourth one is kind of from an innovative standpoint. Some of you are probably too small to do this, others aren't, and that's kind of the Google strategy. I say in the CPA world, 5 by 5 by 5. If you've got a problem, give 5 people 5 weeks and $500 and tell them to come up with the strategy. And if they do, then implement that strategy. If they don't, you failed fast. It hasn't cost you much money. And finally, you have to hold each other accountable. So those are really the steps that I see that you should do going forward. I would just remind you as I close here and step into the questions, if you want to move from what we considered conventional success to a game changer, you really have to change the mindset, skill set, and tool set. So I've got some other resources here in the slides. What I would like to do now, Deb, is see if we have any questions and address specific questions.
Sure. A question came in from Dave, who asked, on the CAS roadmap, what do you mean by the 10X strategy?
What do I mean by what strategy?
The 10X strategy.
10X, thinking 10 times. In other words, if you're a $2 million firm today, what would you do if you were a $20 million firm? And normally, when you answer that question, you come up with the solution that you need to implement, but you think you can't afford to implement it, or you've been thinking linear, and we really want you to think exponential. So to drive different decisions, you have to think 10X. And that's a pretty well-known thought process that Jim Collins, Dan Sullivan, and others have been using for years to solve problems. If you think bigger, you can solve the problem easier.
Okay, great. And then there was also a question, Andrea asked if they can get an updated PowerPoint with the extra slide you had mentioned. And I think you'd mentioned you could send that to us and we can post that in the thank you email that we send afterwards.
Yes, I'll send you the checklist after we hang up, and we'll make sure they get that or can download it.
Okay, great. And minutes here, if anybody else wants to submit any questions, we can go ahead and do that. What I'd like to do at this point is go ahead and ask the 4th poll question, and then we'll have a final slide here from my side as well. So once again, thank you, Gary, for your presentation today. I'd like to shift the focus for a minute and shift everyone's thinking to sort of, after having viewed Gary's presentation, what your next area of focus is at this point, and a few choices that I've given here: deepening my relationships with existing clients, finding new clients, becoming more of an advisor and less of a number cruncher, or working fewer hours or having less stress. And obviously those are not mutually exclusive, but if I were to gauge sort of where your mind is right now as an attendee here, and what you are focusing your energy on the most, we'd like to know that, sort of, so we can design future webinars along those lines, and also make sure that we're meeting your needs there as well. So again, please go ahead and select whichever one fits your mindset the best, and remember to click submit to make sure that you get the CPA credit here. And I'll leave this open for about 10 more seconds here for people to vote. And I'll just say, as I'm seeing the results come in, it's a pretty even split between all four of them, which is great to see that all four of those are strategically important to the people attending this webinar today. So we'll take just a couple of final seconds. Please go ahead and submit your vote if you haven't already done so. Okay, going once, going twice, and sold. Okay, so at this time I'd like to, Gary, I'm just going to go ahead and take the presentation back from you so that I can show my final slide here, and let people know what they need to do in order to earn their CP credit. Gary, are you seeing the thanks for attending slide?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. So once again, I wanted to thank you for attending today. A couple of follow-up items for you. First of all, as soon as you exit this webinar, you're going to see a post-webinar survey. So please go ahead and fill that out and submit that to make sure that you earn CP. If you don't see that window pop up when you close out of this, don't worry about it. A link to that will be included in the follow-up email as well. Second, if you're not signed up for all of the expert webinars, don't forget to attend our next expert webinar, and you may be able to link directly from where I say expert webinar, Eric Askerson on July 26th from CPA.com. If that link doesn't work for you, just go to AccountantsWorld.com and scroll halfway down the homepage, and you'll see a link to the expert webinar series from there. Also, if you'd like to learn more about how AccountantsWorld can help you focus more on strategic advisory services for your clients, and how we can help you to be more efficient and to develop a deeper relationship with your existing clients, and also make more money without more work, please visit AccountantsWorld.com or give us a call. Our practice development consultants are standing by at 888-999-1366. And then finally, a special offer for those of you who are doing payroll services right now, live payroll processing, or who have been considering doing it. Now is the best time to go ahead and take advantage of that. Our award-winning payroll relief solution, which is just recently rated 5 stars by CPA Practice Advisor, is currently available, unlimited payroll processing for a full year for just $997. You can visit AccountantsWorld.com/PR for payroll relief to learn more about that offer. That offer expires in just over a week on July 8th, 2016. That offer will not be back anytime this year after that. So if you've considered joining payroll relief, if you've been thinking about ways to process payroll more efficiently, I encourage you to go ahead and give us a call or visit our website as soon as possible. You can dial that 888 number that's up there, or go to AccountantsWorld.com/PR. And the fine print there, this is available to new payroll relief customers only. Other restrictions may apply, so please go to the website or call us to learn more about that. Once again, thank you for your time today. Thanks again to Gary Boomer for joining us and for his presentation today. We hope to see you at the next expert webinar event in July. And again, if you have any questions for Gary or for AccountantsWorld, please go ahead and write those in, and we'll be happy to spend a couple of minutes answering those.